Welcome. We will now start the press conference for Operation Twin Shield. I'll turn it over to U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services Director Joseph Edlow.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all so much for being here. My name is Joseph Edlow. I'm the Director of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. I'm incredibly pleased to be here today to announce the successful conclusion to Operation Twin Shield, an enforcement effort of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services with absolutely invaluable support from U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, the FBI, and DEA. I especially want to thank St. Paul Field Office Director Samuel Olson from ICE for being here, as well as Abel Vecino from the FBI for joining us up here today. I also want to thank Jeff Brecht and Mike Kennard from FDNS, as well as Michael Borgen from USCIS. And also want to thank Bill McGinn, our FDNS chief in Kansas City, who was on the ground during the entirety of the operation. Since September 19th, officers from our Fraud Detection and National Security Directorate, working in teams, have conducted over 1,000 site visits across the Minneapolis-St. Paul area as part of this operation. What they found should shock all of America. Focusing on a list of over 1,000 target cases involving more than 900 individuals, our officers encountered blatant marriage fraud, visa overstays, people claiming to work at businesses that can't be found, forged documents, abuse of the H-1B visa system, abuse of the F-1 visas, and many other discrepancies. Over the course of the operation, our officers found indication of fraud, non-compliance, or public safety and national security concerns in nearly a little less than 50% of the cases interviewed. We found troubling patterns with the Uniting for Ukraine program that should have raised serious concerns under other administrations, such as an individual filing to sponsor more than 100 aliens, and organizations sponsoring hundreds. We are continuing to investigate these cases. Some of the other troubling cases that our officers found. In one case, officers identified an alien who had overstayed his visa waiver, who was the son of a known or suspected terrorist on the no-fly list. He had previously been found to have engaged in marriage fraud, which resulted in the denial of several immigration benefit requests. He was arrested and is now presently being returned to his country of origin. In another, an individual admitted to obtaining a fake death certificate in Kenya for just $100 to prove he was no longer married. In reality, his wife is alive, living here in Minneapolis, and is the mother of 5 of his children. And incidentally, he has another wife living in Sweden with whom he has an additional 3 children. In another case, an alien entered the United States without inspection in 2023, was released by Border Patrol. The alien married a U.S. citizen while in removal proceedings and was interviewed at the Minneapolis-St. Paul USCIS field office just last week, where both he and his American spouse stated under oath that their marriage was legitimate. The USCIS officers conducting the interview were suspicious. The site visits were authorized the same day. The American spouse ultimately that afternoon admitted the marriage was fraudulent and entered into solely for immigration purposes and withdrew her petition for that alien. This type of same-day action for interview, from interview to site visit, has really never happened before. And I am incredibly impressed and thankful to the diligent work of the agents who made that happen for the first time, but not for the last time. And finally, I wanted to note, in one case, an alien engaged in marriage fraud by taking advantage of an elderly U.S. citizen spouse, including threats and severe neglect. The American spouse was able to divorce the alien with the help of her family and caregivers, but the family still lives in fear of retaliation from the alien over the failed marriage fraud scam. These are not victimless crimes. Every case of fraud we uncover damages our national security, undermines the integrity of our immigration system, and as I just gave you an example, has real consequences. I want the American people to know that we are declaring war on immigration fraud. We will continue to pursue those who seek to abuse our immigration system using every tool at our disposal. This operation, Twin Shield, is just the first phase of what we are looking at. The critical information gathered, the fraud patterns uncovered will help us to combat fraud at the next level. We now begin the process of analyzing, cross-checking, reviewing cases using these results. These investigations will help us determine the next steps in many cases. We will be looking at grants of immigration benefits already given. We will be looking at other patterns, and we will be reopening, re-examining benefits to determine whether rescission, revocation is appropriate in any of these cases. Additionally, I would say right now that if you seek to commit immigration fraud in this country, you will find yourself meeting with our officers at USCIS. You will meet officers within our federal partners at ICE, CBP, FBI, DEA, whoever is working with us. And you will find yourself not only without benefits, but you will find yourself prosecuted. We will continue to tirelessly work with the U.S. Attorney's Office here in Minnesota, as well as in every other jurisdiction, to make sure that these cases are treated as they should be, and that aliens, attorneys, preparers, others who engage in immigration fraud are properly punished. I also want to touch briefly on the reception our officers received in the field. They were harassed, threatened, accused of being scammers, and even had the police called on them. At least one residence was so unsafe that they had to call off the site visit altogether. This is simply unacceptable, and I want to remind the public that our officers are doing a job to protect all Americans. They deserve the respect and cooperation as they go along with those duties. Under President Trump's leadership, we have empowered our immigration officers to thoroughly vet aliens as required by law, and to pursue immigration fraud wherever and whenever we encounter it. Secretary Noem has also recently delegated certain law enforcement authorities to me at USCIS that will allow this agency to establish a cadre of criminal investigators to increase the department's ability to fully investigate and ensure prosecutions of the very types of immigration fraud that this operation uncovered. As we work to undo the neglect of the Biden administration, we will continue to launch operations like this across the country. Operation Twin Shield was a major enforcement operation, and we will be bringing many more efforts like this to cities across the country. The results you see today speak for themselves, and they will serve to deter those who would attempt to undermine our country and its laws, whether for money, to gain legal status, or to harm the American people. At the end of the day, immigration fraud will not and will no longer be tolerated in this country. And now I'll turn the mic over to Sam Olson of ICE. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Good afternoon. My name is Sam Olson. I'm the Field Office Director for Immigration and Customs Enforcement and Removal Operations here in St. Paul and Minneapolis. I'm honored to be here today to highlight the critical and collaborative work that our agencies are undertaking to safeguard the integrity of our nation's immigration system. At ICE, our mission is clear: to identify, apprehend, and remove illegal aliens who pose a threat to public safety and the rule of law. And our officers are out there every day working tirelessly to ensure that we achieve this. Through our ongoing collaboration with USCIS, HSI, the FBI, and other federal partners, we have made multiple arrests of individuals who have submitted fraudulent claims on their USCIS applications. These arrests demonstrate the importance of interagency cooperation in preventing the manipulation and misuse of our immigration system. Fraud undermines the integrity of the system and erodes public trust, and we are committed to addressing it head on. As we continue this operation on our end, some of the referrals that we got from CIS, we'll continue to pursue additional violators and ensure that those who break our immigration laws are held accountable. Our work is vital to protecting public safety, upholding the rule of law, and maintaining the integrity of the immigration process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. At this time, we'll take your questions.
Lou Raguse from KARE 11 News. Did the so-called sanctuary policies that are now subject of a DOJ lawsuit play a role, in your opinion, in the fraud that you encountered during this operation?
I can just say, speaking with our officers out here, we had great cooperation among our federal partners, and that's where the cooperation ended. Clearly, the sanctuary policies did lead to officers having to rely on their fellow federal colleagues in order to maintain officer safety, which is obviously our main, ultimately our main objective, to keep officers safe during these operations.
And then just as a follow-up, then mentioned multiple arrests. Can you tell us how many arrests were made and how many might be expected later?
At this point, I would defer to ICE on specific numbers, but from USCIS, we're still looking. As I said, we're gathering information based on the site visits that we conducted, and we will take additional action as required.
Mr. Edlow, Matt Septic with Minnesota Public Radio News. Has anyone been charged yet? Have any of these cases gone to the U.S. Attorney's Office here in Minnesota or grand jury for that matter?
Again, this is a new operation that's just ending now. We're still in the phase of gathering everything, working along with our federal partners at ICE, especially HSI, as we make the arrangements to determine who is going to be charged and for what.
Joey Hughes with the Sahan Journal. Just a question. You said 900 individuals implicated in this. Does that mean 900 people are detained as a result of this? Or elaborate on that?
No, 900 people were not detained. As I said, there were over 1,000 target cases that USCIS was looking at based on the data, and those individuals were interviewed, were contacted. In terms of what happened with an individual case, that's done on a case-by-case basis.
Mike, there's a different case. Could you explain to folks, because you talk about this is going nationwide, why was Minneapolis selected to begin this operation?
The data. Clear, just the data. When you look at what we're seeing as concerning patterns of fraud, we're seeing good cooperation here, especially among our field office, working with our federal agents. It just makes sense to start in a city where we have a sense of what's going on and where we can try to make an impact on certain things like the immigration fraud from marriages and things of that nature. So it really was based on reviewing data. But this is, as I said, this is not the only city where this is going to be. This is the first of many.
Mike Manzoni, Fox 9, you mentioned that some of this should have been caught earlier in previous administrations. What wasn't being done, in your view, that should have been done in previous years?
Well, you're aware of the CHNV, the parole programs that the previous administration was involved in, bringing people in. People here were allowed to sponsor individuals to come in from certain countries. As I said, we found organizations here that were involved in sponsoring many individuals. They did not know necessarily the individuals they were sponsoring. They were doing almost a blanket sponsorship. That is fraud. That's something that should have been caught. It's something that I know the previous administration was aware of how the sponsorships were happening, and no action was taken. I'm glad to see that we're taking action.
And when a couple of these raises, just to kind of spell out what you're seeing. So when you say marriage fraud, what does that mean? Does that mean like a U.S. citizen is getting married to somebody for the purposes of?
I'm going to turn that over to our FDNS experts who can explain it probably in better terms.
Yeah, so the INA, the Immigration Nationality Act, allows people to petition for family members. What it doesn't allow is for you to petition for someone where you don't have a bona fide marriage, right? So you've entered into a marriage solely for the purpose of circumventing the immigration law. That would be the marriage fraud.
And then
Jeff Brecht.
the phrase site visit, does that just mean like almost like doing a search warrant or like?
No, I mean, these are administrative, right? They submit information and we go out and we verify the information.
And so that's something that they expected to happen? Or?
Yeah, when they petition, they sign the back of the form that says they consent to that.
Okay.
How far back did these marriages go? And the examples of marriage fraud that you found, can you say like, was a marriage conducted several years ago, or
Well, in many regards, it's a lengthy process, right? I don't have the data on how old these were. I mean, some of them may have been within the past half year. Some of them may have been a year and a half old. I don't have the data for you on that one.
Can someone comment on, you said this just wrapped up, this operation. When did it start and how long was it?
Yeah, the operation started on September 19th.
Can you speak at all about the country of origin of the folks that you've been investigating? You mentioned Ukraine.
Well, I mentioned United for Ukraine, but it runs the gamut. This was not targeted at any individual country or person. This was done looking only at the data of what we saw as concerning cases involving fraud. Listen, at the end of the day, this is what the government should be doing. We have a responsibility to keep this system legitimate. And when you see what has been uncovered by these diligent officers over the past 2 weeks, less than 2 week period, that's only the tip of the iceberg to what we're actually dealing with when it comes to immigration fraud. That ultimately is, in my opinion, the same thing as a threat to our national security, a threat to public safety, and something that we've got to take seriously. I don't think this would be as newsworthy if this was, the IRS going after tax fraud. No, you all would expect the government to go after tax fraud. Well, you should be expecting the government to go after immigration fraud and benefits fraud the same way that any other fraud is perpetrated against the government.
Christy Belfino, Pioneer Press. I'm just circling back. You said that you would have to ask somebody else about the number of arrests. Could you possibly do that? You said somebody behind you for the total number of arrests.
For the number of apprehensions?
Yes.
Did you have the numbers on that?
Right. Numbers, like, we don't get into specific numbers. Right now, there's been multiple arrests and they're ongoing. There could have been more arrests happening today that I'm not aware of, so I don't want to give you a number. That right now, it's been multiple arrests.
Okay.
Thank you.
Really quickly, just one more. You said that this has lasted, it was September 19th, and more cities are coming. Can you share what other cities there are? And you talked about data. Can you talk about what data drew you to Minneapolis?
Again, looking at the petitions that we have available to us, the way that our officers that have been working in this arena for many, many years look at the various petitions, applications that have been filed, we look for patterns. We look for fraudulent patterns that we then want to target for the site visits, as our fraud detection national security individuals just explained. Ultimately, I'm not going to speak as to what cities may be next for operations of this side, but I would say any city should be prepared to be the next site for an operation of this magnitude.
So there
Thank
were
you.
red flags in Minnesota. Is that kind of what you're saying by that?
There's red flags everywhere, but based on the work, the cooperation, the work that we knew we could count on with our field office that has acted so incredibly here, not to mention the collaboration with our FBI partners, with ICE, we knew Minneapolis and St. Paul were a good place to start to get that coordination and to start addressing the red flags that we found. Thank you all.
Thank you. This is all the time we have. This concludes our press briefing. I will be available to assist you with reporting needs after. Thank you very much.